Alright, number 3, we're in chapters 8 through 11 of Revelation. Yes, I'm still at the beach, or I'm at the beach if you haven't seen the other 2. You can go back and look why if you want to. So, this is hope and restoration. It really, really is. 8 and 16 especially tie up together, talking about hope and restoration. But again, I'll say that this book of Revelation, and Revelation meaning the Greek meaning of apocalypse, and a lot of people in today's world think apocalypse is destruction and ugliness, and while the Revelation does talk about that, there is more of Christ's healing in here than there is destruction. And you know, the question often comes up, why does God let these things happen, or why does Jesus let these things happen? And often he doesn't let them happen. They're, you know, man-made from some source. Even global warming and our you know, like that's going to happen. Could he stop it? Yes, he could. But there's reasons that he doesn't. And you might not fully comprehend those yet, and you might get angry about it, but go talk to him about it. Go have it out. Go have that discussion. But God's ultimate purpose in judgment or calling something is never destruction. It's never to destroy. It is always restoration. And you're like, how is that? How does that work? Because you think of it as, you know, sometimes if you have a piece of fruit and it's a delicious apple, but it's got a bruise on it, you need to destroy the fruit in a way. You need to cut into it and take that out before the rest of it's good. And eventually, if you left it long enough, all of it would be bad. So to keep any goodness here, he's got to take out the part. That's why he did the flood. That was the only good people. Everyone else, literally everyone else, was not like that. That's why he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. He looked back. He said to Lot, go and find someone in there that's actually worth saving. And he couldn't. So, just, they were bad. They had to go. If you didn't take that out, it's like a cancer. It'll spread. It'll just destroy everything. And, you know, there's times where you see people in a lot of pain and suffering, and you think, they're good people. Why do they have to go through this? It's their refining process. You just got to trust the process. And that's so hard to do when you're in it, and I've been in it. Trust the process. And days that I still just like, I'm not trusting this as much today, Lord. Help me trust. And he shows me so many goodness things of blessings and just so much. Like, there's not even words to describe the affirmation of my trust in him that is given back. From the littlest to the biggest things, and often they're just multitudes of little things, but they add up into this, I know, and that's like a full sentence is just, I know. So, yeah, have a look at that. But, so in this, you know, we can always hold that hope and resurrection of all things. It just, hold the hope in the meantime. If you're going through the middle process, or even the beginning process before you get to the ending, or maybe the ending keeps changing on you, hold hope in the process. In the middle of it, just hold to that hope of restoration of all things. Now, the trumpets that are mentioned, especially in chapter 8, but through this section, are testimonies, warnings, and more so announcements and celebrations. Now, the mentions of Egypt in this are to remind of the lessons of Egypt, especially Exodus 6:6. Go check that one out. Now, plagues can be literal or spiritual or felt both ways. So when they talk about these plagues are going to come, I mean, they did come for Egypt, and it is re-teaching them. But that's to remind you of what happened in Egypt, and that they didn't listen. And the other thing is like, well, why didn't they just come in with, you know, the end one? Because everyone listened to that one. It's like, yeah, but God wants to start you small and say, maybe you'll listen to this one and I won't have to like get louder with you. Just like parenting any child, you know, they go to touch the hot oven and you're like, don't touch that, it'll burn you. Some kids will listen and others will be like, no, I want to find out for myself. And he knows the nature of us will do this. So while some will listen at the beginning, others won't until it's too late and they're burnt and hurt, or worse. And it's just a sad fact of humanity and our willful spirits and our curiosity and so many different things, but we all learn differently and at different levels, and he knows that, so that's why he'll start with a smaller plague or a smaller thing and move up until we get the message. So our lesson in that really is listen and pay attention so we get it at the beginning and don't need to go into the more ugly, right? that's the lesson I learned the hard way. I got into the more ugly, and I'm like, don't like this, how do I get out? But it was so incremental, me not listening, that led to that. It was destructive in its own way, and I mean, he absolutely rescued me straight away and helped me out and wrapped me in support. So from areas that I wouldn't have thought of, and for a long time it was just him and me, but in that we formed a great relationship. So there was purpose in all of it, there was healing in all of it, and you just got to trust that process again. So it's just there. Anyway, and look for messages of the restoration. So here you've got, as an example, chapter 9, verses 6 to 7. It says, and in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So they're wanting to seek that whole, how I've always had that, in these days men shall seek death. How many cases of suicide by, death by suicide do we have? And how many attempted suicides and overdoses and things like that? Because they're just, we don't want to be here, but death flees from them. They're like, no, you've got to stay here. And it's just like, there's no comfort in that. There's a whole symbolic meaning in there, but that's part of that whole, look for messages of restoration, because it goes on to say, the shape of the locusts were like unto the horses prepared unto the battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. So the restoration part here is that, you're looking for locusts, but he's describing a plague of men, because these aren't locusts per se, these are men that just plague, men and women that plague the place with ugliness. And you're like, okay, it's a message from the restoration, because I know that that's going to happen. It's not literally going to be locusts, although I'm sure some places have plagues like that. It's going to be different again. So that's just one example of but there's restoration given in that. Further down you'll see that there's a healing to come. There's a whole lot of ugliness in the middle there, but it gets there. And it talks about sealing up. Now, sealing is a whole different thing. Sealing, if you want some references for that, I'll probably put that in the notes. But there's Ephesians 1:13, Mosiah 5:15, Deuteronomy 6:4-9, and Doctrine and Covenants 109:22. We'll talk about what sealing is and how that's different to probably what we understand it to be, because we might just think of it as being sealed in the temple. There's a whole lot different meaning and depth to that, so maybe have a look at that. But yeah, some food for thought in there, and there's language that is confusing, but again, just pull back and just let it roll over you with a gentle prayer and be like, okay, if this isn't literal, which it's not, what could this mean, and how would I see this in my daily life? Because I think that will help you a lot. So hang around, we're going to go over to 12 to 13 and talk about that. I'll see you there.